Welcome to the Bitcoin Source, the most diverse podcast in the Bitcoin ecosystem. I'm Daru, your host for today's thought-provoking session. I am super excited to bring to you guys and gals my guest today, who is Hector Alvero. He is a Bitcoin educator. He's been in the space for quite some time. He's also a COO and an entrepreneur. I actually met Hector way back last year in El Salvador for the Adopting Bitcoin 2023 conference. It was an amazing conference. I sat down, connected with Hector for a while. So I'm super excited to actually come back full circle and be able to have a Bitcoin conversation with him. So I'm super excited for you guys and gals to see this episode. I hope you enjoy it. If you do find value or insight in this episode, please do not forget to subscribe and like to the channel. It helps me to help you. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. Let's go.
Thanks, Adu. It's a pleasure to be with you. I appreciate the invitation to come on the show.
Most definitely, likewise. And Hector, we're going to start things off from the beginning because this is your first time here. So could you share with us your journey into the world of Bitcoin and what inspired you to become a Bitcoin educator and advocate?
Yeah, thanks. So I first heard about Bitcoin actually on Halloween in 2015. I didn't know back then it was White Paper Day. It was just plain old Halloween for me back then. And it was a brother-in-law of a friend. We were at a party and he started talking about Bitcoin. And I found it very interesting, but I didn't think about it a whole lot beyond that day. Life got in the way and I just sort of forgot about it for about a year. Then I started hearing about it again in late 2016, and I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting that's still around. So I went ahead and just kind of got my first sats at that point. Then I rode it all the way up in 2017 and all the way down in 2018. And when it didn't die in 2018, I said, wow, maybe there's something more here. And that's sort of when I started reading a bit, watching videos, and just learning more about it. And of course, as with most of us who get involved in the space, once we're hooked, we just want more and more and more information, education, knowledge, understanding. And so then in about 2020, that's about when I realized, you know what, this is what I want to dedicate my time to. This is what I want to spend time helping educate others about. And that's when I started making the transition into being in the space. As far as wanting to educate in the space, for me, that was a very natural thing, right? I mean, I've always been an educator. I was a college professor for a while. I worked on the business side of higher education in a number of roles at some various publishers and software platforms and things like that. So I've always been an educator, and I think that that's what many of us do, right? We try to bring our skills and experience that we had before we got into Bitcoin into the space and see if we can find a way to contribute within the space in the way that we have in the non-Bitcoin world. As far as advocacy, I think that was the last part of your question. I don't know that I really see myself as an advocate per se. Sharing something with people who you care about or people who you meet that is true and that is going to benefit their life in some way, that's just doing what's right. That's just trying to make other people's lives better, right? If you see a really, really great movie, you tell your friends about it. I don't know that makes you an advocate. It just means like, hey, here's something that I think will make your life better. Same thing if you see a great restaurant. Well, if you find out about the best money that's ever been discovered, you're naturally going to want to tell people about it because it's going to make their lives better. If what you're telling them is true, then over a long enough period of time, hopefully they'll get it. So I see it more as paying it forward, just in the same way that my friend's brother-in-law paid it forward to me by introducing me to Bitcoin, and all the other great educators who I've learned from along the way have helped me to understand Bitcoin better so that it could improve my life. I just see my role now as paying that forward to other people who I meet along my journey.
Which one's the best crypto asset? Well, Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Okay, what's the second best? There is no second best. There's no second best crypto asset. There's a crypto asset. It's called Bitcoin, right? Right? There's no second best, okay? But take all your money, buy Bitcoin, then take all your time, figure out how to borrow more money to buy more Bitcoin, then take all your time and figure out what you can sell to buy Bitcoin. And if you absolutely love the thing that you don't want to sell it, go mortgage your house and buy Bitcoin with it. And if you've got a business that you love because your family works for the business that's in your family for 37 years and you can't bear to sell it, mortgage it, finance it, and convert the proceeds into the hardest money on earth, which is Bitcoin.
This channel is for education purposes only and is not affiliated with any financial institution. This is not financial advice. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now back to the episode.
Awesome. I love it. And, Hector, it's always a pleasure to talk to you because you're so high energy. And a lot of people, no, seriously, a lot of people in this space, once they've been here a little while, you have like two tiers of Bitcoiners, right? You have the maxi guys that think they know everything, nothing can be changed. And then you have the other people that are just trying to innovate and create these new ways of a circular economy. And I remember having a conversation with you in El Salvador about your background, your upbringing, and I found it extremely insightful. And one thing I wanted my audience to know, and I kind of wanted to pick your brain on, is talking about the circular economy with Bitcoin in conjunction with unorthodox jobs or unorthodox occupations that people might have. And I remember you talking about barbers and stylists and having that background from your dad and from your family. So could you kind of elaborate a little bit about that story and how you could connect the two with possibly a barber using Bitcoin for their services or a stylist doing the same thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this kind of goes back to you try to find ways to contribute to Bitcoin in areas where maybe you have some specialized knowledge, right? So one area that I randomly have some specialized knowledge in is my father-in-law about 40 years ago started a company manufacturing garments for barbers and beauty salons. So when you go to the barber and they put the cape on you so you don't get hair on your clothes when you're in the chair, he started making and selling those. And my wife and I took over that company a number of years ago. And so I'm familiar with that world. So as I got into Bitcoin and started thinking about, how are some ways that we can continue to spread knowledge about Bitcoin? It dawned on me that, barbers, along with some other different kinds of jobs, but barbers especially, they hold a very distinct position within most local economies. And what I mean by that is every single kind of socioeconomic, or political or any other sort of mechanism for stratification of a community or a society, no matter where you are in a particular, community, you're going to have to go and sit in that chair every 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, however often it is. And it presents a really distinct environment for having conversations around Bitcoin. So I thought, if we can introduce barbers and beauty salons to some of the benefits they might get from Bitcoin, they also have a great opportunity to then talk with, educate, and bring others into Bitcoin that might benefit their particular lives, whether they be lawyers or accountants or school teachers or any other, stay-at-home moms or any other walk of life. So as far as talking with barbers about how might Bitcoin benefit them in their barbershop or beauty salon, I start with the same approach as I start with anybody who I'm talking with about Bitcoin, and that's by starting with questions. Rather than trying to impress people with, here's all the really interesting stuff that you know about Bitcoin, which may not resonate with most people, because some people may not care about Austrian economics. Some people may not care about cryptography. Some people may not care about some of the things that I find interesting in Bitcoin. I try to think about who I'm talking to, think about what kind of pain points they might have, and then ask questions around that might lead to a conversation around Bitcoin. So to bring that into the example of barbers. So I might talk with a barber and say, hey, tell me a little bit about how you try to get new clients. Do you do any marketing? Do you pay for that? Like, how do you go about trying to, grow your business and get new clients? Most business owners, whether they be barbers or any other kind of business, they want to get more clients because they want to increase revenue. And that might create an opportunity for me to talk about, well, hey, there's a group of people that tend to be very loyal to the businesses that they frequent. And I might be able to help you get some free marketing to speak specifically to that group. So by talking to barbers about, hey, if they accept Bitcoin, they can get on sites like BTC Map or Sats Map or SatsBack or Oshi or whatever it happens to be, gives them a brand new revenue stream, a brand new audience that they might be able to speak to that they were previously unaware of. And in most cases, they can do that at next to or no cost to them. So that tends to be an interesting conversation. Or if a barber or beauty salon is accepting a lot of credit cards, they're paying that 3, 4, 5% in fees to those credit cards, which is a necessity in today's world for the most part. So maybe I might talk with them about accepting Bitcoin as a way for them to save on those processing fees. Doesn't seem like much, but a good sized barber or beauty salon can easily do $500,000 or $1 million a year in credit card fees alone. And that adds up to a lot of money that they potentially could save on those fees. So it's all about starting with understanding who you're talking to, thinking about questions that they might find interesting, that might address some pain point or some area of curiosity for them, and then letting those questions lead you to that conversation. Or as Dale Carnegie would say, bait the hook for the fish that you want to catch.
I love that quote. And Hector, you kind of elaborating on this, it made me come to mind and think about from the barber perspective. I know that at least, most barbers, it's like still a cash only business. And it makes me think about how can they kind of like arbitrage that into Bitcoin. And I think a lot of the points that you hit there were super insightful and helpful because we're seeing society kind of like mitigate or try to do away with cash as much as possible, paper money as much as possible. And I think it just makes sense for the next frontier of barbers, stylists, even people not even in the stylist side, but more on the product side, like your stepdad was. These are all things that I think as time comes on, we're going to have more of a digitized product or digitized economy. And it always makes sense for the barber, for the stylist who are pillars in the community to kind of be orange pilled as early as possible on that front. So thank you for that insight. And that was definitely a lot of gems there for the barbers or stylists that might be listening to this episode.
Yeah, terrific. And if you are a barber or stylist that's listening to this episode, whether it be now or down the road, if you accept Bitcoin or if you begin accepting Bitcoin or Lightning payments, please reach out to me because one of the things that I've offered up and done for, probably 50 to 100 barbershops at this point around the country is one of the things that we do is we make Bitcoin logo capes. And I gladly send those out to any barber or stylist who is accepting Bitcoin and Lightning payments as a nice, easy, natural conversation starter with their clients. So, hit me up on Twitter or Telegram or whatever, and I'm happy to help you have a nice little conversation starter with your clients if you're a Bitcoin barber or stylist.
Most definitely. And Hector, I want to talk about the company that you're the COO of currently. And there's tons of different Bitcoin wallets out there. There's tons of different Bitcoin only companies out there. But I want to know a little bit more about Rhino Bitcoin. So what is Rhino Bitcoin? And could you kind of elaborate on your role and position there and what you plan to do with the company moving forward?
Yeah, thanks. So Rhino Bitcoin is, like you said, we're a Bitcoin only financial services company, right? So what we aim to do is to give people a sort of holistic experience as they are moving through their Bitcoin journey. I don't know, how your experience, Dadu, when you first got into Bitcoin, if it was similar to mine, but what I found is every time I wanted to do something else with Bitcoin, I had to create like a whole new account, relationship, platform, in order to be able to do that thing. So if you want to buy Bitcoin, go here. If you want to use Lightning, go here. If you want to custody your Bitcoin, go here. If you want to spend your Bitcoin, go here. And to a certain extent, that's still the case for many platforms. So what we thought would make more sense, because I think that approach, like that experience is fine for folks like me and you. because we're here for the revolution. We're all in. We'll gladly put as many apps on our phone as we need to do what we want. But, my mom's not going to do that. The next, 100 million or billion people coming into Bitcoin who are used to a different experience in, call it like normie world, probably are not going to want to do that. And so we thought if we can give people an experience where each time that they start to grow in their experience and in their desire to use Bitcoin in different ways, we want to be there to give them the information, the education, and the consistency of working with one platform, one set of relationships, so that they can easily grow from within our ecosystem instead of having to constantly start over whenever they want to, do different things with their Bitcoin. So that's kind of what our goal is. And in my role as the COO, I know that you also work for a startup in the space, and you're always wearing a bunch of hats, right? So my role changes from day to day. It could be working on product. It might be dealing with infrastructure partners. It might be forming and building and implementing partnerships so that we can expand our offering to include other capabilities and services. It might be user testing. It might be marketing. So whatever's necessary at the time, that's where I focus my attention. So that's kind of my role right now.
Nice. I love it. And, for the audience out there, check out Rhino Bitcoin. Hector is doing some great things in the space, so definitely look forward to seeing more from Rhino Bitcoin. So Hector, I mentioned this before that we kind of connected in El Salvador, and a tidbit for people out there, Hector actually has a big stake or a big push into the educational system down there in El Salvador, teaching people about Bitcoin. And I know that your work with Me Premier Bitcoin has been fascinating and very exciting. So could you kind of elaborate a little bit more on exactly what you did down there and how you were educating the Salvadorian people to adopt Bitcoin?
Yeah, thank you. Really, I feel very lucky to be associated with Me Premier and the entire organization. I mean, certainly the organization has had a lot more influence on me than the other way around. They're just a terrific group of mission-driven people that are building something meaningful and lasting. And that's not just in El Salvador. It started in El Salvador, as many listeners of your show probably will know. But now that group is expanding to dozens of nodes in dozens of countries and continuing to grow and expand globally to create that opportunity for open source education about Bitcoin to happen in all different kinds of environments, where they be informal educational settings, summer camps, formal school environments, homeschooling groups, community education centers. The mission of Me Premier Bitcoin is to bring that open source education to the entire world so that everyone, not just people in El Salvador, can learn about Bitcoin. And honestly, I was lucky enough to meet with John Dennehy, who's the founder of Me Premier, at last year's 2023 Bitcoin conference in Miami. He and I talked a little bit, and I started doing a couple of things for them. And that opportunity has brought more chance to contribute over the last year. And I just feel grateful to be able to bring my little slice of experience and education to help them with curriculum development, teacher training initiatives. That's primarily what I focus on right now. But more than anything, like, their work really just inspires me to think about the different ways that we might be able to introduce people globally to Bitcoin, right? Everything, doesn't have to be, hey, go to your local meetup and meet somebody there. There are ways for us to organize and deliver content in ways that can make sense for all different kinds of educational environments. And much like with Bitcoin, the best way to figure that out is to develop good solutions that allow people to achieve a goal, in this case, deliver education, and then let the individuals at the edges of the network decide what the best way is to implement that information and deliver that to their particular learners, to their particular audiences in their particular environments, right? So having that decentralized approach where we're like, hey, here are the tools that you need to accomplish this goal, but you figure out what the best way is to implement those, because we are not a source of truth. We don't have all the answers. we're going to deliver to you the tools that you need to figure out what the best answer is for you in your particular environment.
We're thrilled to bring you the exclusive Bitcoin Source podcast merchandise collection. Designed with our dedicated community in mind, our collection features high-quality apparel and accessories that embody the spirit of innovation and community that our podcast represents. Imagine a world where your passion for Bitcoin shines, not just online, but in every step you take. Introducing the Bitcoin Source Podcast's exclusive merchandise line, where fashion meets your favorite cryptocurrency. From sleek tees to cozy coffee mugs, our collection is designed for the true Bitcoin believer. Diverse, vibrant, and absolutely eye-catching. Witness our community come alive as enthusiasts just like you flaunt their style, making a bold statement without saying a word. Why choose the Bitcoin Source merchandise? It's simple. Our unique designs are inspired directly by our podcast, created with top-quality materials for durability and comfort. Plus, every purchase supports our mission to deliver the content you love, fueling the Bitcoin movement and our community. Every piece you wear is a conversation starter, a story to tell, a step closer to the future of finance. Visit our store today and find your perfect piece of the Bitcoin Source. We're your support for the podcast and the broader Bitcoin movement with pride. Thank you for your continued support and happy shopping.
Most definitely. And I have to say and be honest here that I recently just came back from Lugano, Switzerland,
Mm-hmm.
and doing the comparison of these two like Bitcoin cities or Bitcoin places where Bitcoin is more ubiquitous. When I went to El Salvador and I used Bitcoin in Bitcoin Beach and El Zante, it just felt different because to me, in my personal opinion, the people from El Salvador need Bitcoin vastly more widely than people from Switzerland or other places in Europe. And when I bought a pupusa or I bought a water for a few Satoshis, it just felt good to kind of relinquish my Bitcoin to the people of El Salvador. And when I went to Switzerland, for example, we used the Satoshi app in McDonald's and some other little coffee shops. And the experience was very different. But I also saw the excitement from the people in El Salvador when Bitcoin was being used or you offered Bitcoin. And I noticed that when I was in San Salvador, it wasn't as ubiquitous, but when we got to El Zante, it was like everything was Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. So it's just beautiful to be able to travel the world, see these places, and actually go to the mecca of where Bitcoin adoption got started as legal tender. So I'm super happy that you're down there to educate the Salvadorians on that same front. And I'm happy that I was able, as an enthusiast, as a podcaster, educator, to go to El Salvador, spend some Satoshis with the people, and be able to bring that experience back to my audience.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point that you make, right? Because it's sad to say, but sometimes pain is the best teacher. And when you talk to individuals or you go to places where they more acutely feel the pain of having inferior money, it takes a lot less time to help them understand that there is a problem. And it's hard for people to appreciate the solution to a problem they don't understand exists. And when we are in our sort of privileged, sort of Western, economies where, we have reserve currencies and where we have, relatively speaking, lower levels of inflation, and theft of our time and our energy, sometimes it takes a little longer for us to understand because we've got Venmo, we've got PayPal, we've got low inflation, everybody accepts our money. That doesn't feel quite the same in places like El Salvador, Argentina, Malawi, Nigeria, Kenya, so on and so forth. So maybe that's one of the things that Bitcoin will also do is give the people who are feeling the pain of having inferior money an exit valve, right? An opportunity to escape that more quickly than maybe some of us who feel like everything's okay currently recognize.
Most definitely. And that leads to another question I have for you, Hector, where I know you've inspired so many people. You're super passionate about Bitcoin. Is there any stories where you could share that Bitcoin has significantly impacted somebody that you've orange pilled or helped, or Bitcoin has been in a position to actually pull people out of poverty or get them into sovereign money. Do you have any like inspiring stories about that you could share?
Well, I mean, I have a story. I mean, you and your listeners can decide how inspiring it is. But about I don't know. Well, I want to say it was maybe 6 or 8 months ago. I was listening to a Peter McCormick's podcast, and he had on a couple of guests who manage a domestic violence shelter here in the county where I live in here in South Florida, just completely randomly. And as I listened to those two women sort of talking about the circumstances that exist when you have women and also sometimes men who are survivors of domestic violence, the struggles that they encounter with trying to A, escape those situations, and B, rebuild their lives and move forward, it really struck a nerve with me because, we all hear about these stories about Bitcoin as a tool for human freedom. And, I love Alex Gladstein's work and his incredible writing about how Bitcoin has empowered and given people all over the world the opportunity to find freedom and to use Bitcoin as a tool for gaining that freedom. And whether it's from North Korea or Afghanistan or Cuba, which is where my family is from, those stories are compelling and they are just incredible. What I had never considered up until that point was that if you are someone who is suffering from domestic violence, in effect, you are in the exact same circumstance as a person who is living in North Korea, or as a person who is living in Cuba, or as a person who's living under dictatorial rule anywhere on earth. You just happen to be living in a dictatorship of one. And the border between you and the freedom that you seek just happens to be the threshold of your front door. And I had never considered that. And the more I thought about it, the more, just taken aback I was by that. I don't know that is a community that we as Bitcoiners have really thought about how we can engage with them and how we can help educate people who are in those circumstances about how they might be able to use Bitcoin as a tool for their individual freedom from their particular circumstances. So I started having conversations with those women that run that shelter, and worked with them over the course of the next several months to develop, an educational program to help inform and educate those women about how they might use Bitcoin and Bitcoin wallets as a way to save some money, to preserve some wealth, so that it could be something that's only known to them, and where it wouldn't be as susceptible to being discovered and potentially taken by their abuser. And that, of course, once they get into a situation where they are in charge of their own lives, then obviously how Bitcoin can help them prevent the abuse that happens to all of us every single day through the through the theft of via inflation by our governments. So that's something that I've been doing now periodically with that group at that shelter. And I really do think that is a community that, regardless of whether you live in a true dictatorship like, let's say, Cuba, or whether you live in any city or town in any state or country that we consider to be free Western democratic societies, there is somebody in your community, there is somebody in your city, probably more people than we would like to believe, that are in that circumstance, and Bitcoin can work for them just like it can work for somebody in Afghanistan or any other place where they're currently in an authoritarian regime.
Yes, and I have to agree with you on that, Hector, because like when I look at the metrics of my show, like a large majority of my viewers, my audience are men. And I think that it's super important that we have guests on, such as the women that Peter McCormick had on his show, to talk about these kind of society issues, because a lot of people don't realize that when you think about Bitcoin, you think about economics, or you even think about technology. You're looking at Bitcoin from one lens where, okay, it's a digital asset or it's a cryptocurrency. Its a number go up. It's going to help me have a store of value for my money over the long term. But then once you get to that point and you understand that, how does this actually benefit society? How does this actually save people from tyranny, from nefarious actors, from people in society that are low vibrational? And when you brought up this domestic violence issue, I think that that is super important for people to tap into and to pay attention to. And I definitely commend you for actually sticking your neck out there, educating these women, giving these women support, because that is much needed in our society. And I think a lot more men need to be paying attention to that and be on board with actually putting forth an effort to mitigate some of those issues in society.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, look, I mean, I didn't do anything but just sort of help to bring some information to them that would be helpful. They're the ones that are ultimately sticking their necks out. In many cases, risking their lives. Just for the opportunity to be able to live free, not only for themselves, but for their children and that sort of thing. So they're the ones that are taking all the risk, and if I can help make them aware of a tool that might be able to help them get to a better place and create a better life for themselves and their families. Then again, I see that as a duty and as the least that I can do in all reality.
Most definitely. Hector, so how do you feel about, I mean, the Bitcoin ETFs are all over the place. People are talking about it. It's a lot of hype. But how do you feel about Bitcoin's role in emerging economies? So I know you've done some traveling, you've been around the world quite a bit, so you're aware of like how fiat money is used, how credit is used, and how Bitcoin is used. So how do you feel about financial sovereignty in the terms of economic development in some emerging countries that you might have visited?
Well, I mean, in a way, we sort of building on what we were just talking about. First and foremost, I think that Bitcoin is a tremendous tool for freedom. And again, that's not necessarily always about freedom of movement, of being able to move freely around whatever your country is, but also a tool for freedom from from having your stored time and wealth, your time and energy, which is all money really is, from being taken from you. So whether it's a tool for actual freedom or a tool for having your savings preserved with high levels of integrity over a period of time, a tool for energy. I mean, when we talk about things like electrification of places like Africa, there has never been a tool that is more perfectly suited to be able to cross the economic chasm that has always existed for expanding the availability of electricity to larger and larger segments of the world. And when you have a tool that allows people to move about freely because their wealth is unconfiscatable, when you have a tool that allows people to preserve their economic energy permanently through time, and when you have a tool that allows for the expansion of more people being able to get access to electricity, which enables all kinds of physical, mental, educational, economic, and sociological progress, that is an incredible opportunity for emerging economies to take positions of leadership around the world that they have never had the opportunity to take before because of some of the limitations that existed that Bitcoin addresses. And I think emerging economies, in many cases, because of that acute awareness, right, they really understand the problem of broken money. And so because of that acute awareness, they really have the opportunity in many cases to leapfrog some other, quote, advanced economies that maybe don't understand the problem so acutely, because that pain fuels their motivation and openness to try new solutions. So ultimately, it benefits everyone on Earth, because the more of the Einsteins and Teslas and other sort of geniuses that exist all over the world that currently don't have the opportunity to have their genius set free because they don't have the opportunity to maximize their opportunity for learning, for education, and for acquiring and preserving wealth. The more of those individual human minds we can plug into our economies, our global economies, the better off we're all going to be as a species.
Speaking on that, with emerging economies and Bitcoin making us as a species better overall, there also are people out there that do not find benefit in Bitcoin becoming ubiquitous, becoming globally adopted. And we've seen in the news recently, Roger Ver, there's been a
Yeah.
ton of wallets that have been kind of getting crushed with KYC. And I know that with Rhino Bitcoin, I wanted to pick your brain on how do you feel about that? Are you nervous? Are you concerned about the KYC policies and the SEC and the IRS being kind of more hostile towards Bitcoin only companies? Are you nervous about that?
Well, I mean, in a way, it's almost two questions there, right? Like, so, like, I'll take the first one about, like, as part of Rhino, am I worried about that? Not really, because I mean, we are, we do operate within the U.S. We are a fully KYC'd exchange. When people buy a Bitcoin from us, they do have to provide their information first. That's just that's the price of operating, operating a financial services entity within the United States. We think it's important for people to have ways for them to buy Bitcoin that they ultimately can custody and hold the keys themselves. That's one of the things that we do and will continue to encourage all of our customers to do, is custody their own Bitcoin and hold their own keys as fast as possible. But they've got to be able to acquire the Bitcoin in some way. And if we're going to offer that on ramp and the connection to sort of traditional banking rails, that's just something that we have to do. So definitely not worried about Rhino on the KYC side. More broadly, just as a Bitcoiner, it does concern me that that there is this increased emphasis on trying to make it more difficult for people to easily be able to trade directly with each other, because privacy is a human right, in my opinion. And I believe that the right to transact privately is an extension of that right. There is absolutely nothing wrong with me, walking into your place of business and handing you a $10 bill or a $100 bill or whatever the local currency is, and trading that, right? Trading a store of my time and energy that I might call cash for whatever service I believe is valuable enough for me to trade that cash for. And nobody needs to know that you and I have engaged in that consensual, mutual exchange. And I don't see doing the same exact activity, but using a digital form of peer-to-peer cash like Bitcoin. I don't think it's anybody's business for everyone on earth, especially the government, to know every single thing that I'm doing with every single penny that I have. So I think that it goes against the founding principles of our country. I think is a violation of many of the amendments to our Constitution, primarily the First and Fourth Amendment. And I don't like the direction we are going, where the idea is, if you're trying to transact privately, it must only be because you have something to hide, and that you should not have the right to reveal yourself to the world selectively, which is what privacy is, which is very different from secrecy. I think everybody should have the right to reveal themselves selectively to the world in the way that they see fit. And to our lawmakers and leaders, I would say that if they do not believe that individuals should have that right to privacy in their transactions, then what I would say is, as soon as they start revealing all of their browser search histories, as soon as they start revealing all of their secret LLCs and shell companies that they're using to purchase stocks without the public's knowledge, as soon as they're willing to reveal all of their financial statements, all of their medical histories, all of their prescription records, all of their personal relationship histories, as soon as they're willing to reveal all of that to everyone in the country, then I'll be more than willing to start listening to why they think that I shouldn't be able to walk into your place of business, hand you a $20 bill in exchange for something that you want to give me for that $20 bill, and you and I be the only people to know about that.
Well said. And I think a lot of Bitcoiners are on the same front as you, Hector. And it makes me think about a speech that I just heard Dennis Porter talk about at the Mass Adoption Festival, where he said that the cannabis industry was a lot like the Bitcoin industry in its early days, where A lot of people were against it. The government was against it. There was a lot of bans. And now you're seeing this slow turnover of the perception of cannabis because each individual state kind of stood in solidarity and pushed the narrative over time that, to kind of change the way that the federal government looks at cannabis, even though it's still technically illegal. But each state has their own kind of prerequisite of how they approach cannabis. And I think that the Bitcoin space is going to eventually come to a point where all 50 states are going to have like their own approach to Bitcoin. And that keeps it from being as centralized of just saying the federal government approves this or the SEC approves that. So I truly agree with you that these are definitely things that are infringing on our freedoms and our rights. And I think as a Bitcoiner, we kind of knew this was coming. We've read the Sovereign Individual, we've read the Bitcoin Standard. We kind of have an idea of where this is going, but I don't think people really expect it to happen this fast and to see how quickly and how hostile they have been towards, Bitcoin company CEOs and people that are trying to push Bitcoin adoption globally.
Yeah, and to not be so, to finish on a less black pill sort of note, right? I'm concerned about it in the short term, but in the long term, it doesn't matter because number one, you cannot stop an idea whose time has come, and ultimately, back to your cannabis example, people don't follow laws; they follow incentives, and like with cannabis, to build on your example. Many people found there was a greater incentive for them to, choose to put something in their body of their own free will, which is their human right. And regardless of what the laws said about it, the incentive was greater, and so they chose the incentive. And the same thing is going to happen with money, because if you think that the incentive to, to smoke weed is a big one, just imagine when more millions and millions and millions of additional people realize what the incentive is to not have your monetary energy stolen from you every single day without your permission, right? We fought an entire revolution for that exact same reason. And so as more and more people realize that, hey, the reason I'm getting poorer is because I have this lousy money, and they realize the incentive to save in better money, you can pass all the laws you want. People just are simply not going to follow them. And because of the way Bitcoin is set up, nobody can make them follow them.
100%. I love that. One last question for you, Hector.
Yeah.
So everybody has a personal philosophy in Bitcoin. Could you share yours and how it has evolved over the years with your involvement with the Bitcoin protocol?
Well, I think I probably made what I maybe is a common mistake. I think it might be at the beginning. When you first really become convicted about Bitcoin and you realize just how critically important it is for everyone to know about it, understand it, and benefit from it. Like with everything, you really want to share that with people. And we typically have a lot of enthusiasm to tell everyone everything we know, to show them how smart we are, to give them the good news, so to speak, and to try to get them into the lifeboat right away. And of course, that's noble and honorable and wonderful, but it typically just doesn't work. Because, again, it is hard to have somebody comprehend a solution to a problem that they don't recognize exists. And so after a while of unsuccessfully trying to, what I've seen referred to as force pill people into getting into Bitcoin, I realized, you know what, I might want to go back to my education roots and realize that a better way to get them interested in Bitcoin is to use questions and ask some questions, learn a little bit about what their pain points are, and see if I can find some pain point, some problem that they are experiencing in their life currently, and then start from there and work backward, right? So it's back to sort of Dale Carnegie and Stephen Covey, right? So seek first to understand and then to be understood, right? Or begin with the end in mind. You may have heard that phrase. That's, I think, a more effective route. And questions are a terrific way to demonstrate to the person you're talking to that you are first seeking to understand them. You are first trying to understand what is it that you are challenged with right now that we can use as a foundation, as a springboard for a discussion that then leads us back to Bitcoin. So if you demonstrate that caring and understanding through questions and you listen intently, you're going to be better off, because you can't push a string ultimately, right? You can only pull it. You can only draw it towards you. There's that cliche that, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. That's true. But if you make the horse thirsty first, then you don't have to make them drink, because they're already going to want the water. So focus your discussions on other people's needs to make them curious, to make them thirsty, because curiosity leads to interest. Interest leads to knowledge and learning. And once they have the knowledge and the learning, that will make them want to act. That will create the motivation for them to act. So let them drive and let them set the pace. There's no shot clock on getting somebody into Bitcoin. We all want it to be yesterday, but that's okay. I didn't get Bitcoin the first time I heard about it. Most people don't get Bitcoin the first time that they hear about it. So if this person matters enough to you, have a small conversation. You don't have to get them from 0 to, 100 in one 10-minute talk. Build some curiosity, come back, ask them some more questions. And also not only be patient, but be cheerful, right? Sometimes it's hard if you've been around Bitcoin for a while to remember what it felt like when you didn't know everything you know now. And right, especially when people come to you about, they start throwing out some FUD, like it boils the oceans, or it's only used by criminals, or it's a Ponzi scheme, or whatever. It can be very frustrating, right? Because it's like, oh my God, why doesn't this person know all this already? Don't they know that this is all FUD? Take a step back, be patient, remember that you were there once, be cheerful, answer their questions thoughtfully, and just try to take small steps forward in each conversation. Before you know it, you'll start to turn that, that doubt into curiosity. And before you know it, you're going to have somebody else whose life you've improved, via Bitcoin.
100%. And Hector, this is why you're so important in this ecosystem, in this space. I absolutely love that philosophy, that approach to Bitcoin, and how you can inspire other people to become more wholesome and more understanding of why we're in this. What are we doing this for? Because people looking outside of the box might think that we're just like some crazy techno nerd people that believe in this digital money. But when I ask people about their philosophy behind Bitcoin, that always gets to the meat and bones of what they're doing and why they're doing it. So Hector, once again, brother, I'm so thankful and grateful for this conversation. Before you go, could you give people your social media handles, anything you want to tell people about Rhino Bitcoin, and also any other future endeavors that you might have you want the audience to know about?
Yeah, look me up. For the most part, it's my name on most socials. So Hector Alvero, whether that's on X, Twitter, or on LinkedIn. That's where you'll see me, fairly often. I'm also on Telegram, which is just my first name, Hector Hodl. So Hector HODL. You can find me there. You can certainly email me at Rhino Bitcoin if you like. As far as Rhino, no, come check us out. We're new, we're growing, and we welcome your feedback. So, download the app, send some remittances to your family, buy some gift cards at a discount, try our services. And most importantly, when you try our services, let us know what you think. Let us know what makes sense. Let us know what you think can be better. Let us know what else you'd like to see. Our goal is to provide, a solution and an experience that meets our clients' needs. And the best way for us to know what that is to hear from you. So come check us out and connect with me personally. And let me know if there's anything I can do to help you individually, on your Bitcoin journey.
Thank you, Hector, for sharing your invaluable insights and experiences with us today. To our audience, if you found value in this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, The Bitcoin Source, a Bitcoin Conversation. Hitting the notification bell ensures that you won't miss out on any future talks with leading minds in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to having Hector on for another future conversation. Until then, keep exploring the vast potential of Bitcoin and stay informed with the Bitcoin Source.
Hey, thanks so much, Don. I really appreciate the chance to catch up a bit. Hope to see you, in real life here soon.